Welcome to Tangelo Talks. My name is Bert Boerman and I lead the Innovation Lab activities at the VANAD group. Today we're talking about an interesting topic, which is the role or the evolving role of AI in corporate reporting, and specifically when it comes to annual reports and sustainability reports. Now, if you are watching this, you probably already know a thing about reporting. We don't need to convince you that it's important to do, but you probably also know that it can be cumbersome at times. Now, fortunately, we already have solutions like Tangelo's software that helps you to make that a little bit easier. But today we want to dig a little bit deeper to see how can AI make that even easier and maybe a little bit more enjoyable as well. So today I'm joined by two experts. So on my right-hand side, I have Erwin Groenendal. He is the co-founder and product evangelist at Tangelo. Welcome, Erwin.
Thank you.
Nice to have you here. And on my left-hand side is Rob Boerman. Rob is the AI expert in the Innovation Lab. Welcome.
Oh, thank you.
So I'm looking forward to having a little bit discussion and to dig into the topic of AI a little bit. I think it's something that everybody is talking about and everybody's very curious about, but there's also a lot of technical challenges to it, right? So we want to talk a little bit about how is it being used today, what is possible, what is not possible, and specifically to dig a little bit more into some use cases of it. Now, the first topic maybe is content generation. So I think that's the most well-known topic when it comes to generative AI. That's what everybody does. You must see a lot of clients and you must also see how people are currently using that in corporate environments, right? So what's your experience?
Yeah, well, of course, just like anyone, like ChatGPT is the first thing they start using. So they use ChatGPT in a separate window. Ask questions, get help, copy and paste a lot, like from the editor in our system to ChatGPT and back. So it's a copy and paste approach, which, well, means it's risky as well because they're using like a public tool in a secure environment, say typing in sensitive information. So it's risky what they do. So yeah. Not the best approach, probably.
Not the best approach. So it's concerns about security, I guess.
Exactly.
Privacy. So a lot of you deal with a lot of private data. So I guess that most of your clients want that data to remain private, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So from a technical standpoint, so we in the past we had this concept of BYOD, bring your own device. Nowadays the concept seems to be BYOAI, bring your own AI. And I know that you're not a very big fan of that. So can you explain a little bit why?
Yeah, well, so first of all, I completely understand people bringing their own LLM, because if the employer doesn't give it to them, you want to get the assistant that you're looking for, of course, but it's not something I would recommend because, like you said, we're talking about security, but it's more about privacy of the data. But there's also an aspect of this which is the reliability of the output. So you need to be able to trust the output. If you're operating in an environment where you have a lot of client-sensitive data, you need to be able to be in control of your data at all points. So you need to know, where does my data live, where does it go, what is it used for, but also when is it purged from a system, what can other parties use it for. So when you're using a $20 a month LLM account, so that $20 is not sufficient to make the system run, I can tell you that. So it requires a lot of computation power. So my question is always to people using this is, if you're not paying with money, what do you think you're paying with? And so usually you're paying with your data. So the LLM provider can use your data for training. So that's not what you want, of course. So, but for the reliability, it's also important to understand. So when you're using a generative tool that is trained for broad use cases, it will give you output that is also general in nature. So it isn't specifically geared to your corporate environment and your corporate data, but it will sometimes also produce outputs that it invents. So it's what we call hallucination. So when it cannot answer your question based on the data it has at its disposal, it will just invent a fact for you. So that is a major consideration as well. if you're basing your your decisions on the output it produces, you need to be able to understand how it's forming its opinion.
Right, so that's some major concern, right? So I think we've all heard the case very early on when a lawyer used ChatGPT to find case law and had very convincing case law and went to court with that and ended up with a reprimand on and a very big reputational impact because he used something that looked really real but actually wasn't.
Yeah, correct.
So how do we solve these issues? So you're addressing that with new functionalities in Tangelo software. So what are you working on?
Yeah, so with the Innovation Lab, we have developed an AI copilot, which is integrated into our secure editing environment. So it's in the sidebar. It's built in a secure way. And you can use this, like instead of doing the copy and paste, it's in the same environment, offering like similar functionality or the same functionality. So you can ask questions, get suggestions, something rewritten or shortened or more elaborate or more ambitious. Like there are different things you can work, let the AI do for you on the text, and then bring it back into the actual document. Of course, everything is in the audit trail. Like it's important that it's not just changes, but it's auditable who made that change. So it's suggested by AI, but approved by the user. Yeah, so it's available, and then we'll make it available as an option very soon, and in a secure way.
Right, so that audit trail is pretty important as well. So I think that people don't talk about much, right? But it's you need to be able to prove also who did what.
Yeah. So everything in our system is like in the audit trail. So every edit, so also an edit suggested by AI and then accepted by the user will be in that audit trail.
Right. Yeah. Amazing. And so, but at the end, under the water, it's still AI. So now we have AI. We have it more privately, more secure. But it's still the AI behind. So how do you avoid these issues like what I just mentioned with the lawyer?
Yeah, so one of the things you need to make sure of is that the AI can actually use the business context and the business data that you have at your disposal when you would be doing the same task. That's what people usually forget. When you ask a question to the AI and you ask it to give you an answer based on your business context and it has no understanding of that, it cannot answer your question. So if you take that into consideration and then see, okay, what information would it need in order to be able to produce a plausible answer, and you feed it that information before it actually starts producing the output, then it starts producing really good output. So whenever we ask a question in the AI sidebar, it will first get all of the business context out of a knowledge base that we've produced based on the corporate documentation of the client. And then it will base the answer on that and on its training data.
Right. So you're providing a context window around your questions. It's a question inside a whole bunch of other data.
So essentially it will fetch all of the information. So it will look at your question and it will fetch all of the information from the knowledge base and pull that into context. So then it will have the question and the context, business context, and based on that, it can produce the answer that you're looking for.
So when we're talking about the context, what kind of context are we talking about? Are we talking about just the text that you selected, or are we also talking about regulatory reporting standards, for example?
So of course the corporate data. So if you have, for instance, corporate reports from last year, you want to have the same tone of voice and everything. So that's your corporate information that will be in the knowledge base. So, but we can also feed it regulatory text, so complete regulatory text like legal frameworks or reporting standards like ESRS or other standards. So, if you give it the agent that is feeding that is automating that, if you give it all of that context and give it the capability to fetch the information out of that context at the moment it needs it to produce an answer, then it can both base itself on your business context and ground itself in the regulatory framework behind.
Right. And so are there other examples of this kind of regulatory frameworks that you would be using? Rob just mentioned one.
Yeah, so I think it's important to emphasize that company information, like it stays private. So that's in the secure environment, but it can access like information, public information as well, and specifically like reliable sources, like the site from EFRAG, where the ESRS standards are like made available in a lot of detail. But other standards like GRI or the ISSB standards. So it's the information out there, but you can also point to specific sources. But again, it's important that the company information, like it's in that secure environment, so that's private. You're not sharing that outside.
Right. So you really make a distinction between what's public and what's private.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. So is that then what you call model training? A lot of people, when they talk about LLMs, it might get a little bit too technical for some of our viewers here, but it's interesting sometimes also to dig a little bit deeper in. So we know that there's large language models behind this, and people talk a lot about model training. You have to train the model and then it's good at what it does. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, sort of. So it's not essentially the model training that everybody's talking about, because it is pre-training, what we call. So the pre-training is consume a lot of information, all of the information out there on the internet, all the public information that it can get, and then train the model to produce output based on that. So that's the pre-training. And then at a certain moment, a model rolls out of that, and at that moment in time, it's fixed. So it cannot change anymore. So when you use it, it has no understanding of more recent facts or of your business context. So what you can use for that is post-training, or you can feed it the context at the moment that it needs it. So it's akin to training, but you're training on the job whilst answering the question. It calls in, for instance, examples of how it did it before and the business context, and then it produces answers on that.
Right, it's a kind of real-time training. So at the moment that you need it, you give it what it needs.
Exactly.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. And then the more you use it, the better it gets trained, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that's also what you can use. So also the feedback that you give it. So it doesn't need to be a one-way street. You can, when you ask a question and you get an answer, you can steer it back, saying, okay, this is kind of what I need, but you need to do it a little bit differently. So that feedback you can also take into consideration next time you ask a similar question.
Yeah. And all of that's like stays in that secure environment.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely. So that's never going back to the model provider. It stays in your environment.
Yeah.
And so when you talk about, you talked a little bit before about you could select the text and it's being inserted into the context, what you just mentioned. So what are some other things that you can do with that?
Yeah, so we're like refining it and tailoring it further, and we wanted to work on like larger pieces of the report as well. So not just what you have in the editor, but larger piece, like rewrite a chapter or like make suggestions on how to improve the text in this chapter. So a larger piece of the document, which will also require a different dialogue with the user, different user interaction, where it's more like a search and replace, like a suggest and replace type of interface. But that's the goal, to not just have it work on like small pieces of content, but also on larger pieces of content.
So could you also do things like consistency checking or see if you duplicate? Because sometimes I can imagine that a lot of people working on these reports and you might get some duplication in the text.
Yeah, exactly. So the thing you ask the AI to do, like, could be like improve the text or like check consistency in tone of voice, but also like cross-referencing. So if you're saying, well, we will get into more detail in chapter X, like, are you really going into more detail in chapter X? So it can help you cross the report as well with all kinds of quality checks, consistency checks, cross-reference checks.
Right.
So it will really be very powerful.
Yeah, and you just mentioned tone of voice. It's an interesting one as well. So you can either also kind of instruct it what your tone of voice, or it can learn about that.
Yeah, it will learn from previous reports,
right?
But it will also learn from the interaction that you have, that the users have. But it's important to keep a consistent tone of voice throughout the report, and that tone of voice like differs from client to client. So it needs to be trained on that, again, with previous documents, but with other documents, with like specific instructions, like you train or feed the model like to do this.
It's like a really, really fast learning intern that you know has to learn your style, your wording, your structure.
Get brainwashed quickly. Yeah,
very quickly. So we talked a lot about text, Erwin. So is there other things that you can do other than text alone?
Yeah, well, the next obvious thing is like doing minor image edits. We of course have the image library in our system. A lot of the photography like is controlled by the design agency, infographics and such. Like we'll not touch that probably, but if they're using their own materials, they might like photos from an event that they did or something like that, like an investor day, like that. Those are the typical kind of photos that you need to manipulate a little bit, like get some people out of the image or like focus it a little different. So we're looking into incorporating that into the image library.
Yeah, I think maybe we can put it on the screen later on. Is like I saw this picture where you had the I think the station in Amsterdam with a lot of people in front of it.
Yeah, it's the Rijksmuseum actually.
Oh, the Rijksmuseum, right?
It's same architect, so easy mistake. But that's a good example where like you have some people in front of the building, or maybe in front of your booth at an event, and you just want to have like an empty view of your
or
booth.
With more people in front of you.
Or more people, yeah, that's all possible.
Great.
But that's the kind of text image editing that we image manipulation that we're looking into.
Great. All right, so let's switch to the topic then of electronic reporting. Of course, everything that we talk about is electronic reporting, but my question is, with all these AI tools, is electronic reporting as the way that you do it, and that the way you help your client do it, is it still necessary, or can you just tell the AI, just extract it for me?
Yeah. It's a big debate. Like you see a lot of LinkedIn posts on this, and a lot of people publishing articles on it. So the electronic reporting we're talking about is the XBRL version of the report. So the Tangelo system allows you to do the PDF, generate like the highly designed PDF, a microsite version of the report. But in some jurisdictions like the EU, it's mandatory to produce the XBRL version as well. And the whole idea of doing XBRL, which is like a machine readable format, so it's actually both human readable as machine readable. So the human readable side to it is that it's HTML, so you can view it in the browser, but hidden in the HTML code, there are XBRL tags that a computer program can read, like a machine can read. So that's the machine readability. And the whole idea of doing that is for transparency reasons, for accessibility and comparability, because you're tagging facts in the report. So it's easier for like investment manager or any other stakeholder with the right tools to like consume a lot of reports and do some comparisons with it, or maybe even automated investment decisions based on that. And it's not just for financial data, but also like the upcoming mandate for tagging the sustainability disclosures in the report as well. And that will really make it very transparent, like a company's sustainability strategy and performance. And the whole idea is that transparency will drive capital to like green activities. Companies like that have a lot of green activities. But the debate is, well, why do we need to add meaning to the report in that way? Or can't AI just get that meaning from the PDF version of the report? So that's the big debate. Like, do we need electronic reporting to understand the report, or can AI understand the PDF version of the report?
But that's a really fascinating question, because in the past, when we talked about machine readable, we're talking about ones and zeros and code and Python and JavaScript. But right now, with all these generative AI tools, I have the understanding that the machine can actually understand human text, right? So why do we still need to do this with tagging? Why is it so important? Yeah, so one thing that people need to understand is that AI, generative AI in general, they're not knowledge systems. They're text generators, so they're probabilistic by nature. What that means is, I often call them stochastic parrots.
if you repeat the same phrase to a parrot, eventually it will start uttering the same thing, right? So that's essentially how language models are trained. They're trained on massive sets of data, and they will start producing semi-accurate results. But like we talked about hallucination before, of course, that's a big topic. So that if it doesn't know how to answer your question, it will start making it up. But one of the problems also with this kind of generation of text is that it can misinterpret your documentation. So if the only thing that gives meaning to the text is the structure of the English language, we all know that when you're reading a text and you explain it to somebody else, everybody gets a different meaning from that same text, right? So that's also what language models do. The tools that they have to extract the meaning is looking at the English language. So, but the consequences of that is pretty massive, because it will do it so convincingly that you cannot distinguish it from a true fact. And that's a big problem when you're just relying on its language capabilities to produce an accurate answer for you.
Yeah, so when you talk about, because a lot of people talk about hallucinations, may be interesting for the viewers as well to like, what is hallucination? Is it that it makes a mistake? What is hallucination for people that don't understand the concept?
Yeah, so the what a generative AI system like a language model does is, based on all of the context it has ever seen and your question, it will start producing one word at a time that is in line in what it thinks that you expect the answer to be. So it's been trained to always do that. It will always produce an answer. So, but when it doesn't have sufficient information in order to produce that accurately, it would just start making stuff up, because it's a lower probability word, but it's the only thing it has. So that's what it does, and that's what we call hallucination, because it will just sort of start dreaming the result.
Right. Yeah. So even from my understanding, even the reproduction of the correct answer is still sort of a hallucination. It just happens to be a very good one, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
that's it.
Yeah. So when you feed it the proper context and it has an understanding of that context, the chance of it getting it right will increase. That's how you have to look at it.
Yeah. So this is why you apply then the XBRL tagging still. On top of the AI usage.
Yeah, I think that the combination, like it will improve the results, like strongly, even, like, because the whole idea of like tagging, it's even called like tagging facts. So if AI understands that when it's tagged using XBRL, it is actually a fact. So doesn't need to predict like an outcome or come up with an answer. Like, it knows that's the answer. But on top of that, like, you can use AI to do something, make conclusions or help you make conclusions from those facts. So I think a structured content format, and XBRL is the standard for that. Will, in combination with AI, will work wonders. We've seen our partner Corporate Ratings doing very nice things, getting with that combination. So
can you explain what they do?
Yeah, so Corporate Ratings focuses on like the consumption of those electronic reports.
Right.
And also helping companies do the tagging, but their main focus is on like providing products that investment managers and other users can use to get information from those electronic reports. And they've added AI functionality on top of that. So that's the optimal combination. We also see like wrong examples, like bad examples of like people trying to get information from the PDF versions of the reports, and like a publication that was published by XBRL International, like, is a good example where like somebody in the US like took, I think, the reports of 200 listed companies, but the PDF versions, and asked a couple of questions, and I think there was only an accuracy of 15% in that when they asked about a fact, actually, like something that could be considered a fact, so that it was easy to compare. If you would look at the XBRL, like you would actually see the correct answer. So you get 100% accuracy in that. So and it's weird that they didn't use the XBRL version, because it's been mandatory in the US for ages. And even like the detail of tagging in the US, it's much more detailed than it's required here in the EU. So
really,
can get like a lot of facts on not just about like the financial performance, but remuneration. Everything is tagged. Every number in the report is tagged. So yeah, so it's weird that they didn't consider like using the.
What I love about this is that, essentially my understanding of where it came from, the tagging was for regulatory purposes and goes into this regulatory black box and you never see it again. And the regulator probably does something with it, but this really sounds like the market is using that for business use cases.
Yeah. So yeah, corporatings is helping companies like actually use it. Like that's very interesting to have a look at.
Yeah, great. Yeah. Now, that consistency is, of course, super important. You need to create a level playing field between things.
Yeah, and the XBRL takes away the ambiguity, like and gives the structure and like the solid foundation for AI to further reason on that.
Yeah. So we understand that tagging is still very important. Now, does that mean that we have to manually keep tagging everything ourselves, or can we also use AI for that?
Well, no, that's again like an obvious thing. Like we're looking into allowing users to do assisted tagging, as we call it. So AI will make suggestions on like what concept to use for a tag based on like the text around that number, or and even making suggestions on like extensions, like because you can use a standard concept to tag, but it's also allowed to define your extension. There's some limitations around that, like you cannot just make something up. That always has to be anchored to a standard concept.
These are extensions company specific then?
Yeah. So these are company specific extensions. Like company might still has the option to like report slightly different than the IFRS standard. But they need to define that their definition, like and anchor it to existing concepts. And like AI can use like reading the accounting principles, like and then deduct from that probably this fact like needs an extension. So yeah, looking into using AI for that as well. Bulk tagging. So for the upcoming tagging requirements around the sustainability statement in the EU, like there are large pieces of text that needs to be block tagged, and that's something we feel can easily be done using AI. Again, like we do want to have like the user, have the control over that. So it will be assisted tagging, but for that part, like it will be really helpful. Speed up the process, but keep the user in control and always have the auditability of their actions as well.
Right. This is when they talk about human in the loop, human in control kind of concepts, right?
Yeah.
So I guess for this kind of application, corporate reporting, you can't afford to get it wrong, right?
Exactly. Yeah. It's very important that for some parts, like the auditor will ask questions about the report, you can't just say, well, AI came up with that idea, so just copy and paste it into the report. No, you want to have that control, as you can see, which user, and then maybe even now we're sort of making functionality up, but like the reasoning, like and the sources that AI used to store that as well and keep that in the audit trail could be useful as well.
Right. Yeah, that's it. And so, you said looking forward. So, other things that you're thinking about in the future?
Well, people ask a lot about translation. So, looking into allowing using AI to translate like an almost final draft of the report. So translation is interesting as well.
Yeah, I guess that most of your clients are publishing in multiple languages.
Yeah, in the EU, so we see some countries requiring companies to create a report in one of the official languages of that country.
Right.
So, for example, in the Netherlands, by the way, it's not mandatory to publish the report in Dutch, but in Belgium, you do need to choose like an official language. Could be French, English, or German. But also Chinese and English, you see a lot with our Asian clients. Yeah.
Right.
And other European countries like Finnish and English or Swedish and English.
Yeah. But there's regulatory requirements on that, but there's maybe also expectations from from the users or the end users of the report, right?
Yeah,
So if
yeah,
you have
exactly.
a big investor base in China, then you might want to have a Chinese version of your report
Yeah,
as well.
yeah. So there's sometimes the language, or in many cases the language is mandated, but the other reason is like to be able to attract capital. Like you want to address that group of investors, like in their language.
Yeah. So when we're talking about things like that, for example, translation, I mean, that's pure language, right? So I guess that is something that the AI must be particularly good at. So could you just give it a report and just say, translate this into Chinese?
Yeah, so that's what people online are using it for a lot, of course. Translations is the first thing you look at, is a language model. So, but it's good at general things, and I explained this before. So it's good at the baseline usage of what everybody's using it for. But so the output will also be fairly general. So it will not have a good understanding of your corporate jargon, of your regulatory context and everything. And that's important to put it into the good tone of voice in the translated language. Essentially, when it's not your first language, it's hard for you to identify whether or not it's good or not. So you need to also have a little bit of help there. So what I usually explain to people is that so these systems are called GPT, so it's generative pre-trained transformers, but you can also use the abbreviation as a general purpose tool. And that's how you have to see it. Without spending a little bit more effort on guiding it in the proper direction, it will start producing outputs, including translations that are fairly good, but not good enough in a corporate context.
So you don't want to be littering your text with emojis in a corporate report, maybe.
Oh, exactly. Like an EM dashes.
So how do you find that balance? That because what I understand is that you should really use it as a tool to make your work faster, but it doesn't necessarily replace people that are experts of a certain language, for example, or a certain reporting standard, right?
Yeah, so what you have to understand is that in the end you are responsible for the content that it produces. So in a business context, when you have a job to do and you have delegates that you can delegate a certain task to, but it's your signature ending up on the final result, you need to be able to assess whether or not the output they produce is good. So it's the same with a language model or a generative AI tool. When it produces output, you need to stay in control always. So you need to understand first, is it good? What information did it base itself on? Can I track it back to, for instance, the XBRL taggings so that I can quickly assess whether or not the information it produces is accurate or not, and then steer it back if it's not. So it's a big mistake to use these kinds of things especially for decision-making processes, and then just accept a decision that is proposed by the system.
Yeah, it's efficiency that we want to bring. We want to support the team with AI, bring efficiency and speed, but the user is in control.
Right.
Yeah.
That remains a core concept of so it's about speeding up efficiency, but not removing control.
Exactly.
So it's a fine balance to find, I guess, right?
Yeah. Oh, true. But if you provide like the right user interaction and never let AI like do things by themselves,
right?
You will get that control, but users will get a lot of efficiency out of it, a lot of speed, like speeding up the process enormously.
Yeah. So we talked a lot about the production of the reports, about the tagging, etc. That those are all essentially very much internal to how your clients are using the software, right? Yep. So, but there's another group of stakeholders involved here, which are the end consumers of the report. So how are you thinking about AI when you're thinking it in that perspective?
Yeah, so we touched on that big debate, but if we focus on like the audience, like the people that will go on the internet, look for information about a company. So these are like employees, customers, suppliers, and especially around sustainability information. Like you see a new audience, like beyond the investor and the shareholder. So they will look for information online. So it's important to have like the website version of the report because they expect to find information in the browser. And we see, and then they can access the information. But we see, and it's a good example, one of our clients, cm.com, they, like in their website version of the report, where they present the annual report on the website, they have a box where you can ask questions with AI on the report. And so the best thing, of course, would be to have the structured report, like the XBRL version behind that. But you can get, you offer a different way of like accessing the information. And I think that's a very interesting thing that also companies need to start taking into account. Like it's not just, well, in general, the website that people will look for, but they will ask questions in ChatGPT probably on that company. And the same for an annual report, like they will start asking questions about the company's strategy and performance. So it's important to like cover all of those channels and way of accessing the information in the right way.
Yeah, it's very fascinating. As you see, really a shift in how people consume information nowadays.
Yeah.
I mean, it went very much from physical to websites, from websites to mobile to just a simple Google search. But now people don't even have the patience for that anymore. They want instant answers to an instant question.
Yeah, right? We see clients like still like wanting the engagement with the users. So like they want to have a highly designed PDF, like an interactive microsite where they can really explore and like have that engagement. But it's a new way of accessing the information that they need to start taking into account as well.
Yeah. But we've all seen this kind of general chatbots on websites, and I had the case where my bank card was blocked some time ago, and I went on the chatbot of the bank and I said, my bank card is blocked, and they gave me 15 offers of what fantastic bank cards they have available, but it didn't really answer my question. So, and especially when a topic like this sensitive of corporate reporting, how do you then make sure that if you have that kind of interaction by an AI where you're not in the middle anymore? Because I assume that every time somebody asks a question, now you don't have a human in between. So how do you go about doing that in a secure, safe way?
Yeah, so we already talked about retrieval, of course, so you need to be able to feed it the right context at the right time, but I think it already starts one step before that. So what you have to understand is oftentimes when people ask a question, there's a lot of ambiguity in the question itself. So it's not exactly clear what they mean. So in order to be able to understand how you have to answer that question, you have to remove that ambiguity. So that's what we do first. We do some intent recognition to find out, okay, what is the question behind the question? So based on the regulatory context and all of the corporate documentation and, for instance, previous questions, can we find out what this question means and then fetch all of the information necessary to answer that question? So usually what we do is we translate the user's question to the real question that they're trying to get answered and then answer that question. Because we've all seen these chatbots. You go online, you ask a question about a really specific topic and you get an answer say, that's not at all what I meant. So that's what you want to prevent, right? It's the same with you. If the bank would have done some intent recognition on what does this question mean, they would have seen that you're not interested in a new product, you're interested in support on an existing product.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing we need to do. But then after that, of course, it's also super important to have all of the data that you have at the disposal, produce it or store it in a manner that the AI system can efficiently get it for you. Because what you don't want is you don't want to have a 30-minute waiting time before it starts answering your question. You just talked about instant gratification or instant answers to questions. So it needs to be stored in a manner that it can quickly do that. But I think that's the most important thing. Get the question right and then get the right context in and then answer the question.
It's all about asking the right question, understanding what the meaning of the question is, and then getting the answer. So it's really about getting in the head of your user, right? So the experience of the end consumer.
Yeah, and then everything comes together there. So being able to efficiently build your reports, publish them in the right way, like for engagement, but also for AI access, and ideally incorporating like AI in that user engagement as well.
Right. And so to coming back just very quickly to the topic of tagging that we discussed before. So I assume that this context that you're feeding into the chatbot is not the PDF version. It's more likely going to be the tag.
That would make perfect
data.
sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Just to ground it in reality.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the answer to your question will be always 42 for maybe a little bit more older people in the audience. So yeah, before we wrap it up, maybe just a personal question to you. So I start with Rob. So if you're looking at AI, what is something that you get really excited about?
I think the main thing I'm excited about is the personal efficiency. So I've always been an efficiency junkie. I've read all the books on personal efficiency. So, but now with the AI, you get a whole new level of efficiency where AI starts helping you accomplish your job that you have to do. So my real excitement comes from how far can we push this efficiency without losing control. And that's a constant balance of every time you're going to take it one step further, how can I still remain in control and know and understand what it's doing, but helping me accomplish my task in a more efficient manner. So that's super exciting.
Yeah.
The level of efficiency I'm getting in my personal job, if I compare that with 2 years ago, it's mind-boggling how far we've come.
Yeah, I definitely recognize this. Like it's the productivity gain from AI is huge already. That's mostly for me, at least, like around working with text, and that's the first thing, like we talked about in our application, like allowing users to work with the text. Not just smaller pieces, larger pieces, like get the consistency checks and everything. Thing I get most excited about is like what's beyond that, like actually have the AI do things in the application, like beyond text, like helping you with the workflow optimization and doing like really some amazing productivity boosting stuff, like in the application itself. So we have a lot of ideas that we're working on with the innovation lab. So so I think we'll have some more exciting things to show and tell next time.
Exciting stuff. Integrated efficiency. So I'm going to summarize it like that. So I want to thank you both. So Erwin, thank you for your valuable insights in what is possible, what's coming, and Rob for the more technical side of it. So this concludes our Tangelo Talks for this time. Of course, we could be talking about this for 2 hours. There's still a lot to discover. There's certainly it's interesting to have another discussion about it. So if you have any questions, you can always reach out to the Tangelo team, and we're going to promise you that we're going to have a human answering your question.